Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf and Gavin Shaw here. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, you're getting to see our beautiful faces. If not, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. We just launched it where you can now watch our episodes instead of just listening to them. But if you're also just listening, happy to have you as well, as always. And Gavin, we have a great guest today. We have one of our good buddies, Prez from the Strickland. Is here to talk about Kemba Walker. Prez earlier this summer wrote a really good piece on Kemba when he first signed with the Knicks on the Strickland. And as a result, we wanted to have him on for the Kemba season preview to talk about a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, Prez is about as good as it gets at player evaluation, at least in our line of work in terms of podcast guests. And he breaks down every single aspect of Kemba's game, what makes his handle so fantastic, the pace that he will bring to the Knicks, just how good of a shooter he is, and the fact that his percentages might actually underrate that, and will he ultimately be a liability defensively, and what will ultimately define whether or not he has a successful season, and especially some stuff between him and Derrick Rose that I hadn't really thought of that Prez brought up that was really, really intriguing. So all that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Welcome in to Locked On Knicks on YouTube. We are really excited to be here on YouTube. This is actually our second YouTube show. We recorded our first one with the great folks from Knicks Film School, going over our bold predictions for the year. But this is our first one with our fancy overlay and everything. It's pretty dope. Doing this from our respective recording places. I am Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief at Knicks site, The Strickland. Going to be ready for clutch points this year from my classroom with my chalkboard behind me. And he is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, recording from the Batcave.
Let's go. Let's go.
with the bar behind him. And we're joined by Prez, who is recording in the blank void of space. From the Strickland, Strickland draft writer normally, but also wrote one of the definitive Kemba Walker pieces of this offseason, and that's why we decided to bring him in for the Kemba Walker season preview. This is actually our final season preview, and we decided to do this one on YouTube. Prez, how are you doing? And how excited are you for some Kemba Walker basketball this season?
I'm doing great. I'm coming to you live from Redacted, and I am very excited for Kemba Walker hoops. No secret that I love Kemba Walker and have for some time now.
So first, I guess to start our discussion, you wrote a really good piece on Kemba, and I don't just say that because I was the one that published it and edited it and everything else. It was really, I think, comprehensive of what he means to New York in terms of what this signing meant, what him playing for New York means after everything that he did, coming up here in high school, going to college right up at UConn, which is probably the closest power program to the city of New York, playing in the Garden, doing all of his exploits they did in the Big East tournament, everything like that. I mean, let's just contextualize that first before we get into the actual basketball. What does this mean to New York and to native New Yorkers to have Kemba Walker? You described him, I remember in the piece, as one of the last great New York point guards, quote unquote, that's scrappy, undersized, gets by purely on his skills, his extremely fantastic dribbling package, his pull-up shooting, all these things that allow a guy that's 6 foot on a good day to succeed in the NBA. So what does his return mean to you, I guess, as a native New Yorker, but to the city of New York at large, I think is a pretty interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it probably depends who you ask, but in my opinion, and this is pretty much what I said in the piece, it's his return is it's like a bunch of small wins that together are a big win, because like on the court, he's still really good, even if he's, not Kemba Walker, all NBA player anymore or whatever. He's easily the best point guard we've had, not including Derrick Rose, in ages. Um, he's a name guy, right? I'm not gonna say household name, but he's a star player. Like hoops fans recognize him. My mama knows who Kemba Walker is, so that means that's got to count for something, because she doesn't know most of the Knicks. And it's the first time we've had somewhat of a star like unexpectedly join us, and it also showed that like the front office could exceed expectations in a major way, and on top of that, he fits what we need on the court with the 3-point shooting and the spacing and the ball handling, which is something we really lacked outside of D Rose. So like the combination of his history and our struggles as a franchise and laments as a fan base, it all kind of comes together in a real storybook way, knocking on wood, hoping that he can stay pretty healthy and all that. Cause he just brings that energy and the skills we need. So it's just something really exciting to me.
I guess this is, the biggest picture question, and maybe ultimately the only one that matters. But Prez, how much do you think Kemba has left in the tank? Because obviously you kind of have to separate the injury concerns from just like his current age and the wear and tear from basically being not the guy in Charlotte. He was like the team in Charlotte for however many years. And obviously in Boston, we saw him go in and out. We saw him not play at 100% a lot of the time, took a lot of criticism for he was definitely a willing charge taker, but overall for his defense in Boston, and at times looked like he had lost a little bit of juice, but it's very hard to tell. Was that just the knee coming up, or was that a guy who, as a smaller point guard and at a position where shorter guys don't tend to age exceptionally well, like maybe he's losing a little bit of that zest that, made him a household name and made him such a talented player in the first place. All that being said, statistically, still a very good season offensively a year ago.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And I think anybody who tells you they know the answer is full of it.
Yeah.
I've looked over the stats a lot, as I sometimes do, going down rabbit holes, and it's tough to really know, especially with like his injuries. Like last year he shot overall 42-36, which is literally his career line, which is 42-36, and he scored 19 points a game, which is he scored half a point lower than his career line of 19.9 points per game. But then if you break it at like post and pre All-Star break, he had about the same number of games. And like before the break, he shot 38, 36, 90 with a TS of 53, true shooting percentage, after 45, 36, 89 with a true shooting percentage of 58. And then he played hurt in the playoffs, so that obviously wasn't the same guy who we saw in the second half running around kicking butt. So I don't really know what version of Kemba we're getting. We know he doesn't get to the rim as much anymore, but we know he still can. We know he can pass still. We know he can still shoot from distance. It's really the inside the arc stuff that is the big question mark. Last year, he shot less at the rim, but was like almost insanely efficient, like over 70% on layups, which is not going to happen again. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions, but like to me, it doesn't matter, because number one, like the low end outcome here is still better than what we were coming from last year. And then also, this is something I don't want to go on a tangent, but like this is something I was thinking about today, is like we still have Derrick Rose, who's really good. And I don't think people understand exactly how good, like there's a chance Derrick Rose is still better. Like there's a chance Derrick Rose is the best point guard on this team, better than Kemba Walker. And it's not because Kemba's a bad point guard anymore. It's because Derrick Rose is just a sorcerer now, apparently. I don't know.
All right, we're going to take our first break. Just a reminder, this episode is brought to you by Sweatblock. And I'm not sweating at this moment. Thankfully, it started to cool off a little bit outside. Therefore, my house has cooled down a little bit. But let me tell you, I'm normally a pretty sweaty individual. It's not fun. It's not a great time being a sweaty person. You're always self-conscious about how your pits look, and you tailor your wardrobe around it and everything else. It's not a great time. Things have been a lot better since I started using Sweat Block. They're super easy to use. Come in a little wipe, so it's almost like an alcohol wipe or something. Take that out of its package, dab it on your underarms before bed, wash it off in the morning, and then your underarms are protected for a whole 7 days against sweating. It really works. It really, really works. I went to a 100-degree wedding over the summer, and it was all outdoors and inside a hot barn with a metal roof with no air conditioning. And I'll tell you what, my head sweated plenty, but my armpits stayed miraculously dry throughout that whole thing. It's easily the best antiperspirant that I've ever used, and I've tried a large number of them. And no wonder, Sweatblock has the dry shirt guarantee. If Sweatblock does not keep you dry, you get your money back. It's also the best seller on Amazon for the past 10 years in the antiperspirant category with over 13,000 reviews and currently at number 1 in the Amazon antiperspirant category. You can wear what you want to wear with Sweatblock, and it can be your little secret to confidence. So don't hold off. Make sure to get some today. You can get it for 20% off at sweatblock.com with promo code locked on or at Amazon and CVS. Yeah, I'm with that too. I think that there's a good chance that Rose might actually be like the best point guard on the roster. And, that leads to some intriguing questions, right? Like we kind of talked about this on the bold predictions episode with Macri and Jeremy, but Macri seemed to think that there was a chance that maybe Rose ends up playing more minutes than Kemba. And not just due to injuries or rest or whatever, like literally just like minutes per game, he ends up playing more. And I kind of pushed back on that, and I was like, well, I kind of feel like if there's a scenario where there's, both those guys are going to get, pretty decent minutes, like there's probably just going to be a lot of times where you're going to end up playing together. Mm-hmm. But I guess they're, depending on what the defensive matchups are and everything else, we saw, Kemba is, for all of his talents, he's prone to getting burned on defense. He let Raul Neto absolutely cook him in the final preseason game. And it wasn't by virtue of just not trying either, so much as you might want to, pin it on that. It was in part due to the fact that he just can't hang with guys. He even someone as unintimidating as Raul Neto in the grand NBA scheme of things, he can sometimes have a problem hanging with. So maybe there are scenarios where Rose ends up closing more games than Kemba. I think that maybe brings me to the next thing though. Prez, I'm curious, what do you think? I think Kemba's role is going to be interesting to keep an eye on this year. Do you think that he's gonna for sure be the guy that will be opening and closing games for this team no matter what? Or do you think there are some chances that, he might, we saw this happen with Tibbs last year where certain guys had almost a guarantee that they were going to be closing games, like Julius Randle. I think it was kind of just Julius Randle, if we're being honest. Down the stretch of the season, Derrick Rose was pretty much a guarantee to be closing games. But other than that, he's willing to, based off who's hot. He would sit RJ down to close games. And if Alec Burks and Reggie Bullock were doing great, that was your wing rotation to end the game. If, Nerlens Noel, for example, was doing really well, he would leave him out there instead of putting Mitch back in. These are the sort of decisions that Tibbs makes throughout the season. Do you think there's any chance that Kemba won't be part of that guaranteed closing lineup type of guy? Or do you think that he's pretty much, based off his stature as a player and everything else that comes with having freaking Kemba Walker on your team, do you think that he's probably going to end up, closing most games?
No, I don't think it's guaranteed, because I think it'll be a matchup thing, because him and Rose, they're both pretty good, and it depends how things are going. Like, Rose is a great shooter now. He can't put him up from far with the same volume that Kemba can, but if he gets that thing, he'll shoot it. And he doesn't, we've seen it in the preseason. The guy shot 1,000,000% from three, and last season he shot 40% for three. So it's not like he's a bum out there from three, and he gets into the paint more and stronger than Kemba will. And He's probably a better defender than Kemba on ball, although Kemba's probably better off ball. So they both bring different things to the table. So I think it'll be like last year, like you said, like it'll probably be Julius, and that's really it, because he has so many tools at his disposal, coach, this year, that like I don't know, if somebody forces his hand by playing super awesomely, then maybe somebody else will join Julius as guaranteed closer. But in the start, I don't think they're gonna pencil anybody in like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to even think like there could be a game where Alec Burks is like 6 of 7 from 3, and all of a sudden he's in there. And like that sounds weird to say, like given like all the different options, but it's true. And like I've talked a lot about this offseason about like them potentially playing Rose and Kemba together. I don't know how that works defensively, but if both those guys are rolling, like on offense,
Sure.
like, yeah, I mean, we like what we've seen from the Knicks that has been so amazing this preseason is just having passing, shooting, and ball handling at the 1 through 4 spots, and the kind of like the exponential like cascading effect of that, and how much stress that puts on a defense. And the Knicks, I mean, they've taken advantage of it because they've been extremely unselfish. And I think, Alex, you were saying this a little earlier on our Bold Predictions podcast, like that's taking into account that a lot of these guys are missing shots that they would typically make in the regular season. The more important thing is they're getting such clean looks. And I guess, Prez, that's kind of what I want you to get into next. Like, what's sort of the cascading effect that Kemba has down in this Knicks lineup? And I know that's also about Evan Fournier, and that's also about RJ Barrett, but it feels like, I mean, obviously, like it's easy to say anyone was an upgrade over Elfrid Payton, but it's almost immeasurable, like what his presence means for every other guy on the floor.
Yeah, I think the biggest effect is on pace. He's, I think, way more likely than anybody else on the roster. Maybe Fournier is up there too, but like Kemba's a little different because he controls the ball as the point guard. But like he's not afraid of taking a shot in the first 5 seconds, or just driving straight and kicking in the first 5 seconds. Julius still, he still likes to measure things up and warp the defense by just holding the ball and faking and stuff like that. And everybody else kind of plays off of them. And Derrick Rose, like he's, when he brings the ball up, it's usually steady and controlled. And, like we saw last year, he's not going to speed demon it up or whatever, like De'Aaron Fox or something. So that causes chaos when you have guys who can dribble, pass, shoot. If you have somebody like Kemba who's willing to just run up there and shoot, or run up there and drive and kick and just start making chaos happen. And I think it literally just means like more possessions. And when you're a good offense, like this team probably will be, like it's going to be more buckets. So it might be too simple of an explanation, but to me, it's like he just causes chaos because guys can't stay with him, and he's has a quick trigger.
Yeah, I noticed that with him too. I guess the one thing that has sort of worried me this preseason is that Kemba, I mean, this isn't unique to him. We've also seen this with Quickly. I guess those are the main two. I mean, Kemba just has not really had it shooting the ball this preseason, I feel like. And I know I shouldn't be worried about that, but there's a part of me that's like irrationally worried that he's just kind of like forgotten how to shoot. And I worry, I mean, here's the thing, and maybe this is where my line of thought is going. I worry a little bit that if his shooting is not like borderline elite, like pushing 40% from 3, that he might not be nearly the player that we want or need. His I don't want to say lack of burst. He still obviously has burst, but
he hasn't shot 40% from 3. Like that's
ever.
The thing.
Yeah,
because he takes such hard 3-pointers and shots. One thing that I'm kind of with you, like during the preseason, sometimes I would be like, man, is that a good shot? But it's literally just a mental adjustment from what we saw last year, where it's like guys take their times and it has to go from Julius to someone else. Sometimes Kemba would take a step back 3 or a mid-range shot with like 5 seconds into the play, and it's just like, oh, like, is that really a good idea, Kemba? But I think he's still a good shooter, but like because of the volume, he'll never shoot 40% or something like that. I'm not really worried about the jump shot. I'm more worried about the defense. And like we have to see what Tibbs can do to hide him, because like we've seen other really good coaches do that, and I'm sure Tibbs has great ideas for it, but we haven't seen that because he hasn't really had the need to hide anybody so far.
All right, we're going to take our second break. We just want to remind you guys, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar, and you know it. Built Bar is one of my favorites. I eat them all the time after I go work out. I try to stay as active as I can, going to the gym and staying active. Built Bars always help me recover from that. They come in so many delicious flavors too. It really doesn't feel like I'm eating a protein bar, even though I am. A couple of my favorite flavors, coconut and cookies and cream. They remind me of some of my favorite candy bars. They're absolutely delicious. And really, I mean, it gives you that impression like you're eating a candy bar without all that guilt associated with eating a candy bar. No fats, not a huge amount of fat or calories or sugar or anything like you're going to have if you're eating a candy bar, even if it tastes like one. Built Bars have 16 grams of protein, just 130 to 180 calories, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs per bar. You're not going to do any better with any other protein bars, at least not any that taste as good as Built Bars do. I can tell you that much. So if you want to get some for yourself, go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
And guys, we wanted to remind you that we're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron and the hardwood as teams are back for another football and basketball season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this year. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about that too, but I just feel like if this team has a full powers Mitchell Robinson and hopefully a full powers Nerlens Noel and Taj Gibson backing those two up, I don't think that should be too much of an issue, or at least I want to hope that it's not too much of an issue, because I think that that's really a core tenet of what Tibbs wants this team to do. He wants them to funnel people into the middle, which is kind of funny. Like, this came up during the bowl predictions thing too, but I kind of was like, it's funny, like Tibbs had this reputation and all these people said prior to last season, like, oh, Tibbs doesn't adjust. He's an old fuddy-duddy. Like, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing in the modern NBA. He's never going to adjust his defensive scheme. It's just ice, ice, ice. That's it, blah, blah, blah. And then what did he do? But like, they don't really push people towards the perimeter anymore so much. It's more, he wants to funnel people into the middle, into these three behemoths that he has as his starting backup and third string center in Mitch, Noel, and Taj. And he knows that they can handle business on the inside and deter people from trying to get there. And like we already saw, even just with fresh off of injury, super tired, dead-legged Mitch, that he was already deterring people from going towards the rim. So there's a part of me, and I mean, I don't know, maybe you feel differently about this, Prez, but like there's a part of me that almost thinks that based off of what Tibbs has always valued from point guards anyway, as long as Kemba tries and he doesn't actively sink the defense when things happen that are sort of beyond his control, that are just a result of him being as short as he is and all that stuff, it hopefully shouldn't affect them too poorly. I don't think on that end, just based off how the scheme is now, where it's very, very dependent on the wing defenders and the help defense from the big down low to kind of push things along on defense.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, it was a concern, but I'm not like from a team perspective, I'm not super worried. I agree with you. I think it's still most of the time it's going to be Kemba and four other guys who can play really good defense, or in the case of Evan Fournier, passable, fine defense. So I'm not really tripping over that.
Prez, what do you think of Kemba as a passer? Because I know not a guy who's ever put up like massive assist numbers. I think we were talking about earlier today, career high somewhere around 6 a game. And it feels like he's someone to me that more so like gets the machine in motion. Like he will get the like hockey assist or like one pass away from the hockey assist, but he'll start things going and create a sequence that is favorable, but not necessarily be the guy who like draws enough attention to get an assist every single play. But I'm curious for a more like nuanced take on what exactly he brings to the table in that respect.
Yeah, it's a good question. To use an analogy that I sometimes use when describing point guards and passing, he makes the reads in the textbook, and he makes them with regularity. Like we've seen already, like all the basic stuff from him in this preseason, even with his like not shooting that well and rustiness and whatever. We've seen him like manipulate the defense from the top of his eyes and then pass it to the corner. We've seen him throw an alley-oop. We've seen him just do a basic pick and roll pass to somebody rolling. And, you know, we've seen him drive and kick, but he's never going to do stuff where it's like, whoa, that's not in the textbook. Like LaMelo Ball, who's just going to like make some shit up and oops, I don't know if we're allowed to curse on here, but make some stuff up and just like invent new ways to find people open. He's not going to do that. So I think he's similar to Rose in that way, where like they've mastered the essentials, but you're never going to get like crazy freestyling. But the good thing is because his handle's so nuts, he can kind of make some openings on the interior that are not available to some other guards, which helps make up, I think, for his like lack of ability to do some of the cool passes that taller guards can do and stuff.
For what it's worth, we get, you used up our one shit for episode. So good job.
You're welcome.
Crap, I just did a second one. Now we're screwed. We're going to get fired now. Anyway, especially this is on YouTube. No, they don't like cursing. We're going to get removed from the algorithm. We're going to learn all these new things. Anyway, Prez, I gotta. This is another thing that has been bugging me about Kemba's offense, and I'm well, not bugging me, but it's been a thing in the front of my mind as far as thinking about how he's going to work this year. So I'm curious your thoughts on it. He's been for most of his career, and I mean, I guess Boston could be considered. I'd be lying if I said I did a ton of study on how he looked in Boston, with Tatum and Brown and all that, but. It's sort of the same thing that follows around a guy like a Dame or a Kyrie or something like that, where Kemba, it's like when you think about him, you think about Kemba with the ball in his hands, and that is the way that he generates most of the looks that he gets, or at least the best looks that and that's generally how he scores the ball, is he has the ball and he uses maybe a screen or something, but he finds a way to put the ball in the hoop. The thing with this Knicks team is I feel like there's going to be a lot of times where he's going to be a spot up player, where he's going to have to be ready for passes from Julius Randle getting inside, or a pass from RJ Barrett if they're deciding to kind of feature him on any given play, or even Evan Fournier, just kind of whoever else other than Kemba Walker happens to have the ball. Like the Knicks have done a good job of now building this team where it's Kemba plus three. It's Julius's team, but if we're talking about in terms of Kemba, like it's Kemba plus three other extremely capable ball handlers out there and extremely capable playmakers. So what do you think about Kemba as a off-ball player? Like I think that we've seen, and I've said in many ways, I think coming onto a team with Derrick Rose is going to be really good for Kemba at this stage in both their careers, because Rose at this point, for all the faults he had his first time around with the Knicks, now I think is really, really good at like knowing how to play without the ball in his hands just as well as he can with the ball in his hands. Like he's really good at moving around without the ball, finding the right spot on the perimeter, catching that kick out pass, and having the wherewithal to make the right decision about whether to take that quick spot up jumper or to put the ball on the floor and keep things moving again, if things break down. I think those are situations that Kemba's going to be put in a lot, because obviously if Derrick Rose was put in those a lot last year, then Kemba filling the role that Rose was filling like late in games as the like de facto, he wasn't the starter, but he was certainly the closer last year. Like he was closing games with the starters minus Elfrid Payton. I think those are situations that Kemba's going to find himself in a lot. So how do you think Kemba does without the ball in his hands? Like how is he going to adjust to this new situation this year, where I feel like even more so than when he was on the Celtics, where obviously they had Tatum, who's a fantastic player, I think that he's going to have more times this year where he's, for lack of a better term, just kind of watching things happen, and is going to have to make sure that he's in the right place to make the right thing happen, for himself or for others. So what's your confidence level in him as like an off-ball player this year?
I think it's a high floor. Like, I don't, so he's a fantastic shooter, and like I said earlier, his 3-point numbers don't reflect how good of a shooter he is because of the difficulty of them. But if you look at his catch and shoot numbers, they're
I did
always
mean
like,
to mention, by the way, he did shoot almost 40% 1 year in his career, 39.9%. He got almost there.
He could do it this year because
Yeah.
like for this exact reason, because he's gonna have more chances to take easy threes. And like last year, I think he was 39 or 40% on catch and shoots. He was 45% on wide open threes. So like, this guy's a professional shooter. He just takes some hard shots and is not a tall person. So like, if he's off ball, cool. Like, I'm for it. I think it'd be great. Just like when Rose, we've seen Rose shoot 40% from three, just standing on the perimeter or whatever. The question to me is he off ball going to be like Rose, where he's like a spacing threat, except obviously probably gets more respect from three than Rose? Or are they going to get funky with it and do more how we see with Quickly, where Quickly is more likely not just standing still, but screening he's the best screener on the team. Like, he's hitting people and just causing chaos because he's such a great shooter. And that's the question to me. Is Kemba comfortable doing that stuff? And if he's not, like, it's not the end of the world, but that's just something I wonder about, because they could do it, but he's, like you said, he hasn't really had to do that. It's more of the just when he's off ball, it's more just watching stuff happen and just preparing.
Prez, can you put in perspective, like, just how bad of a defender he is? Like, are we talking Trae Young, something a little bit more than that? And I think when that question really becomes relevant is playoff time. And I know you mentioned that you think he's better off the ball than D-Rose. D-Rose is better on the ball. But does that become a conversation for Tom Thibodeau in certain matchups where he has to say, like, you know what, if they're just going to keep going at Kemba time after time after time, I'd rather have Rose out there, because to your point, that's not a significant drop-off offensively. On certain nights, not a drop-off at all offensively.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation. And, some nights they might be like, oh, someone's kicking our butt. Let's get Rose out there. He's a little bigger. But in terms of what he is defensively, I think it's mostly fine.
Yeah.
Off ball, he knows where to go. He's took more charges than the entire Knicks team last year, which is insane and an awesome stat. Because he knows where to go off ball. Like, there's times, and that doesn't even account for the times he doesn't take a charge where he screws the whole play up for the other team because they see him ready to take a charge. So it's not just like a, once every couple games thing, his off ball being in the right place. And the other thing I wanted to mention, when we tweet this out, I'll reply with this link. One of my favorite basketball videos that I like to send people is from Ben Taylor, his Thinking Basketball channel. I think his name is Ben Taylor. It's fantastic basketball mind, right, or whatever. And he has a matchup on the Celtics. I mean, he has a YouTube video on the Celtics Raptors playoff series against each other from a couple of years ago. And the whole, like, half the video is about Brad Stevens, Nick Nurse chess match, hiding Van Fleet and Kemba Walker, who are both short, good defenders. But because, like y'all said, in the playoffs, like, you can be great off ball, but if you're short, they're going to find you and they're going to take advantage of it. So it's the whole, he details like, oh, they're doing this pre-switching, and then the other team sniffs it out and they try to call out the pre-switch, but there's like counters to the pre-switch and all this stuff that's like way over my head.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's Tibbs lives for this nerdy stuff, and he's probably got like wild video or binders or something on file with all this stuff. Easier said than done, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone's going to be a maniac and get into trying to figure out how to crack whatever code, it's going to be Tibbs. I mean,
it's a team effort thing. That's the thing about, it's not just a coaching decision. Oh, we're going to hide somebody. No, it's like, because you're talking about coordinating pre-switches and stuff like that, hiding Kemba requires buy-in from the other guys. So that'll be kind of interesting. And
it also requires an approval from everybody, Kemba included, an acknowledgement that Kemba is someone that needs to be hidden. And I think that'll require a certain amount of humbleness on Kemba's part that, I mean, I have no reason to believe he doesn't already have, or maybe he even already kind of acknowledges like, yeah,
He did for Stevens.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's old enough at this point in his career to not be like, no, give me the assignment coach. I want him. He's not like RJ Barrett still, like who's like,
or like Alfred Payton. What was it?
Yeah.
I forget if it was last year or the year before where he like waved off help versus some star. Maybe it was like Harden or something.
Yeah. And Elf was doing like, I seem to remember Elf doing the slap the floor thing at one point too, and trying to act all tough. Like, and clearly, I mean, he needed to be hidden too. That was another guy that needed to be hidden, but was too bullheaded to ever want it.
Right.
I wouldn't expect someone younger who's actually a good defender, like say an RJ, who I just said, to ever accept that sort of thing. But at the point of Kemba's career where he's at, I think that he probably has the wherewithal to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, like let's figure out something where I can be, where I can take my energy for offense. Let's put it that way. It'll be sort of like what the Hawks did with Trae Young last year on the Knicks, where they just say, hey, we're going to find you a defensive assignment that requires minimal effort, and you stick to him like glue, and that's it. And that's Reggie Bullock. And, that's what you're going to do. So hopefully the Knicks are able to sort of imitate that sort of style this year with Kemba Walker. So to sort of start wrapping up our discussion here, because we're getting towards the end of the show here. We've asked this for pretty much every single player, I think, that we previewed. And this is our final one. I can't believe that we actually we're honestly the kings of starting these projects where we review and or preview players and then just kind of like trailing off and it never gets done. So I'm pretty proud of us. We actually managed to do it this year. We hit every single player on the Knicks. We previewed them before the season started. This is the final one, Prez. You got to be on the last one. The question that we have asked every single time is, what would constitute a successful season for Kemba Walker this year? And I figure we can kind of go around the horn on this, but being the guest, Prez, I'll throw it to you first. In your eyes, what represents a successful season for Kemba Walker this year?
That's a really good question. I would guess the biggest thing you want to look at is games played, right? So 82 game season, I think 60 would be pretty phenomenal, judging from. Although I don't know, like he played about 2/3 last year, like more than that the year before, and 80 games or so the 2 years before. So I maybe I'm setting the bar too low, but I would say 65 games of 25 minutes per game, putting up a slash line of like 44, 38 with a league average shooting percentage. How's that for specific?
That's really specific. Yeah, I'll take that. I was going to paint with much more broad strokes, and I probably still will. Gavin, what would you say is a successful season?
Yeah, to me, it's not even. I mean, it is how many games he plays, and somewhere around like 65 to 70 would be amazing. Is he fully healthy for all those games? And I think that is the biggest thing, getting him to the finish line fully healthy. And again, only like playing him when he's fully healthy, because the Knicks, between Derrick Rose and Emmanuel Quickly, they have the depth to be really, really conservative with Kemba Walker. And the big issue with the Celtics last year was like the season got moved up and Kemba thought he had more time and got, I believe it was a knee procedure at a certain point, and that kind of screwed up his entire year. Because he never really got on track and kind of rushed back, and it just never really clicked and felt right for him. So I think a Kemba Walker that, again, even slightly diminished in terms of his explosiveness, if he's feeling pretty good and pretty healthy, he's a picture perfect fit on this team. And again, he's going to be the engine for what I think will ultimately be a top 10 offense in the NBA. And the most important thing, again, is that he's just fully healthy come playoff time. So to me, that's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, I would say I like both those things. I think that the health is obviously thing number one. If I want to set the bar even lower, I would say be demonstrably better than Elfrid Payton. And that's pretty much all you need to do. I mean, I don't think that the thing is that by adding Kemba, even if he only plays like 80% or even 70% of what he used to play like with Charlotte, or even, what he played like with Boston, you're getting so much more production than you would have gotten from Elfrid Payton, who you weirdly, if you're Tibbs, started for every available game last year during the regular season, didn't sit him until the playoffs, and even at the most limited amount of playing time that you were giving him during the regular season, still would give Elf like 17 minutes a game, or sorry, like 14 to 17 minutes a game by virtue of playing him like 7 minutes to begin each half, roughly. You know, literally if Kemba played 15 minutes a game, which I don't think is going to happen, but if he played 15 minutes a game and played it better than Elfrid Payton did, he's going to make this team demonstrably better than they were last year. And that's how low the bar is for him. So really, like, all he has to do, and all the Knicks have to do, and all Tibbs has to do, is keep him healthy enough to contribute all throughout the year. And don't be afraid to maybe have a game here and there where Derrick Rose starts and quickly spells him off the bench as the backup point guard, or vice versa. Maybe you have quickly start in place of Kemba as an attempt to sort of get quickly acclimated to being more of an alpha type guy, and have Rose come off the bench and spell him for a few games. You know, I think that's the main thing for me. It's just, and so it's not even on Kemba that much. All Kemba has to do is just kind of be himself and just play how he's always played. And I guess if we're talking about the injury thing, not be afraid to go to Tibbs, who I'm sure can be kind of intimidating as a coach, to tell that you have an injury or something and you want a day off. And not be afraid to just be like, hey, Tibbs, like, I need a day off today. You know, the knee's bugging me. I don't want to screw with it. I'm going to talk to the training staff. I'll get treatment today. I'll be back next game. You know, or even if it's the second game of back-to-back and he's like, it's a little swollen today, I want to take a day off. You know, don't be afraid to do that. And then I think there's no way that this cannot work out well for the Knicks if all that happens. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as Kemba's season coming up. But Prez, this has been great talking with you about Kemba. Again, I'll direct everybody to look up your piece from the Strickland that you wrote on Kemba. I'll probably, if I remember to, I'll link it under the Twitter link to this episode as well. Now that we have a YouTube, maybe I'll put it in the YouTube description. Oh my goodness, what a concept!
I can record a live reading, or we could get whoever has the coolest voice of all the people on the Strickland. Maybe Theo.
There we go. Yeah, Theo's got a great voice for that sort of thing. How did you describe it the one time? He's got like a.
He's from the Bahamas. It's just everything he says is automatically cool.
He's got like a Bahamian uncle vibe. Like,
yeah,
like you just want to listen to him talk. Yeah, he's definitely got that going on. At any rate, do you want to let everybody know where to find you online, where to find your work, all the great stuff with the Strickland, all that good stuff before we let you go?
Yeah, at _PREZIDENTE on Twitter. On thestrict.land is where you can find my rambles. And hit me up if you want to talk draft stuff, because I also have Draft Strickland, the spin-off of Pod Strickland, where I get to nerd out with no rules or constraints. So you can find me there.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Prez, for popping on. Thank you all for listening to us on, whether it's still just in podcast form, if you decide to make the switch to YouTube. We appreciate you for joining us. And we will be back. I don't want to completely say that it's 100% in place, because we've had to reschedule a couple times. We have a cool other guest coming on this week in the lead up to the season. That's another big Knicks content creator. So we'll leave that one nebulous for the moment, but hopefully we'll have that coming out before the season starts, and we'll have lots of great coverage this whole season. Again, both in podcast form and on YouTube, where we now reside. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you all soon. Peace out.